Hello and welcome to this episode of Standing Apart, the podcast that explores why being different is a superpower. With me, Nigel Ridpath. This week's show centres on the second half of an interview I recorded with Vala Afshar and Henry King. If you haven't listened to the first part, I recommend that you go back and check that out first. Vala and Henry's latest book, Autonomous: Why the Fittest Businesses Embrace AI-First Strategies and Digital Labour, has just been published. We had so much to talk about in terms of their book and how they see the world of AI and business evolving over the next couple of years. Not to detract from the interview, I've paused my regular features, my 1-minute rant and superhero of the week. They'll be back soon. So here we go with part 2 of the interview. What I'd like to do, one of the ways I find it's useful to get really under the cover of what a book is all about, is if you could explain to me what sort of person you had in mind as the reader when you were writing it. Who did you think your audience was going to be?
You know, I have the good fortune to work for one of the most successful software companies in the world, a market leader. And so I'm in front of CXOs almost on a daily basis, virtually or in person. And as someone on the R&D part of the company, I'm working with technologists, but in the last 2.5 years, more and more CEOs, because this technology is boardroom level awareness. The board is asking the CEO, what is your AI strategy for building product services, building and competing against, the industries that you're a part of. So in the 30 years I've been in tech, I've never seen this unquenchable thirst for the board to understand the direction of the company. And again, I've watched the cloud computing, the mobile revolution, social revolution, data revolution. All of us in tech for 30 years have seen significant new ingredients. This is why I say chef. If you're using old recipes, just think about the last 15 years and the new technologies that now govern and dictate and drive growth in around the world. And we're still new ingredients, quantum computing, distributed ledgers, 3D printing. It's incredible. So when we're writing this book, I'm always thinking about the most important persona for me is a budget owning senior executive. But having said that, I want my children to read this book because I can't imagine today. You could be a liberal arts student, and I hope you have a young demographic and listening to your podcast, Nigel. You will, when you go for an interview, no matter what position you're going for, in my opinion, if it hasn't happened now, in the next 1 or 2 years, you will surely be asked, show me how many AI assistants and language models do you use on your phone? I have a dozen on mine. I tried to flex on my 22-year-old daughter only to find out she has 3 dozen. So immediately she schooled me. But the questions will be, tell us how you use generative AI to solve a problem. Tell us about a project that was successful. We use agentic AI. Tell us the personalities that you've noticed with different language models, because I know Claude is different than Gemini, is different than Perplexity or ChatGPT or Agentforce from Salesforce. They all have different personalities. They all have different ways of shaping and providing that output to you. So only a power user would know that. Not even a power user. If you just have to use 2 and you'll recognize the differences. But I absolutely believe if you want to work at my company, you better be prepared to talk about digital proficiency and specifically AI proficiency. And again, I didn't say this about any other technology in the past, and I absolutely believe it to be true for this. So to answer your question, my most important persona, business leaders that are deciding the direction of the company and what they build and how they go to market. But at the same time, I want that 22-year-old that's, optimistic and hungry and wants to have an incredible career and create generational wealth and have the freedom to spend his or her time as they choose, to realize that every company is going to be disrupted by an autonomous version of itself. Every company is going to be disrupted by an autonomous version of itself. So if you can help that company become more self-driving, in those boring, repetitive tasks that suck the joy out of us, then you're going to have a wonderful career. And if you ignore that, you're going to struggle more than you probably have to. So that's hopefully it's a big spectrum in terms of people benefiting from the book.
One of the things that's been occurring to me as the two of you have been talking, obviously the book's called Autonomous. It's, you were saying that one of the pillars in Boundless was autonomy. You also said, Henry, that, that shared success is it was also like a kind of guiding principle. I'm really minded of Dan Pink's Drive. All about motivation. I mean, out of his three pillars, you've already talked about two, which is autonomy and shared success. You could use purpose as a kind of an analogous term, and then mastery is the final one. I'm just sitting here wondering whether this might be easier than we think it's going to be. And let's face it, there's a lot of fear and confusion and the rest of it out there, because maybe a digital autonomy might also give people more autonomy on the bits that are left. You've got that kind of shared purpose that Henry was talking about. So maybe we will have more time to get masterful at those things that are left for us to do. Yeah, so I don't know whether Dan Pink's kind of thinking on motivation, had any bearing. I'm just hearing some of the same terms.
And I think it's an important one. Dan Pink's model, came from Professors DC and Ryan. And that model was and is called self-determination theory. And it's been a remarkably successful theory since its inception. I think they came up with it in the 70s and have been testing it in all sorts of environments ever since. And as you rightly say, I think that they talk about autonomy, relatedness, and competence. Maybe they talk about mastery as well. And I've always been struck by that. And I believe that this is true of humans, and it's also true of AI, and it's also true of companies, that if you want to be successful, and of course, what they're talking about, what DC and Ryan and Dan Pink are talking about are psychological needs, right? Psychological needs for optimum well-being. And I think, interestingly, we share those. Right. So as individuals, we have a need for autonomy, but we also have this deep need to be connected. And that's what you were talking about with shared success. It's the real importance of being connected with other people. And of course, one of the things that we're hearing about is the increase in isolation and how that's really threatening the well-being, especially of a lot of young people nowadays. And so there is the sense that connectedness is just as important to human well-being as autonomy is. And then I think that, another of our principles is mobility. And of course, the freedom of movement and the freedom to determine whether you want to move or not is super important. And I think that has an important, that ties back into autonomy, right? The sense of whether you feel that you are free to go or stay and not forced to go or stay, like a refugee or, someone who's been forced into human trafficking or whatever it happens to be. So the idea of movement per se is not as important as the freedom to move or the freedom to stay in place. So, I have the sense that this model of DC and Ryan and of Dan Pink of autonomy, relatedness, and competence or mastery is really, really important. And it's proven true over the last few decades. And it turns out that that's what technology wants as well. Technology wants its own autonomy. It too needs to be connected, right? So, the two big things that happened in the 80s and 90s, well, 90s perhaps, were one, the appearance of the internet and not the internet, but the World Wide Web that really enabled us to be connected. And then the appearance of the personal computer. In the 80s and 90s as well. So these two things, both the ability to be personal, to be individual, to be independent, to be autonomous, and then to be connected. And, these ideas of individual intelligence and capability and connected intelligence and capability really kind of came together and have continued to be so important. And I think that this is what organizations need as well. Organizations need to be autonomous in the sense that they need to have a meaningful brand. They need to have meaningful values that people relate to. They need to have a meaningful product or service or offering. But they can't be isolated. Again, they can't be silos. This was one of our things, which is, if you're a siloed organization, you're on your way to obsolescence and death. You need to be connected. You need to be connected to your customers, to your own employees, to your business partners, and to your communities, and to the world. And this is the way to success. And if you look at a lot of modern companies now, you'll find that they've got these ingredients. They've got their own very strong identity, but they've got this very, very strong connectedness to their business ecosystem. And those are the things that generate, if you like, their own mastery. We agree with you. We think that these three things are super, super connected.
The onboarding process of bringing a digital agent is highly precise. You have to identify a job, tasks that make up the job, the actions you want the agent to take, the guardrails you want the agents not to do, and then the channels you want the agents to operate. And it's highly composable. So highly composable, highly precise. So when you're on this journey, you identify wasteful activities. Waste is overutilizing a resource, underutilizing a resource, applying the wrong resource. At my company, now that we have 300 active agents over the last year, we've identified a ton of wasteful activity. And there's a realization that all waste has cost. And it's never good. No one raises their hand and said, this is good waste. It's bad. So it's cost that you should try to avoid. But not all cost is wastely. Often when you're focused on better EBITDA, better margin, better profitability, you look at the highest line item in your expense and you scrutinize in that order, only to take out costs and realize you may have now had value atrophy because you removed something that was costly but was incredibly valuable to your stakeholders. Yes. So focus on waste, not cost. As you go onboarding with agents, as you automate and you hyper automate and you now give agency to software to take actions on your behalf, that autonomy, you start to create an organization that resembles a living organism. Us three, we're the best example of unsupervised autonomous systems, humans. And living organisms are flow-based. If you look at the top 10 reasons why we cease to exist, why humans die, 6 of the top 10 reasons are due to blockages. Cardiovascular disease is the number one cause of death globally. Aneurysms, strokes, build cavity in your arteries and you cease to exist. It turns out you have a ton of blockages in business when you onboard agents and you hyper-automate. And in our book, Autonomous, we identified couple of hundred blockages. And in business, the faucet is running a little bit. So you see the water dripping and you think you're healthy. It's not that out of breath when you climb a set of stairs where you realize maybe there's a blockage. Maybe I should go see a physician. Maybe I should take blood thinners and aspirin. Maybe you have to, a stent has to be put into play. So there are ways for humans to address blockages. In business, super hard to root cause, super hard to remediate. And this is why nearly 7 out of 10 Fortune 500 companies have disappeared since year 2000. In the last 25 years, nearly 70% of the highest revenue companies on earth are no longer here. And so in autonomy, we talk about when you're not focusing on AI, you're not recognizing waste, you're not recognizing blockages and bottlenecks. And this is perhaps the single biggest reason you may fail to compete and demonstrate relevance as you move forward. Hence the title, The Fittest. We started this book thinking and trying to answer the question, what does it mean to be a healthy company in an AI-powered economy? And we realized by 2 practitioners implementing agentic AI on a regular basis, some of these powers that come from digital labor is really practice that's working on the health of yourself, your team, your organization, and your ecosystem. Digital Darwinism. That's essentially what we are trying to better understand as we navigate these convergence of uncertainty. And there's more uncertainty now than any time in my career. Climate, politics, war, tariffs, future of work, new technologies. Henry and I have more unanswered questions than answers for your audience. And, that's why you got to maintain that beginner's mindset.
I really love that. I was facilitating a discussion. As you know, I work a lot in the Microsoft Dynamics arena, and obviously we're getting some similar messages. I've got 4 hypotheses, and I'd like to put them to the two of you one by one and just get your thoughts on them. I put these 4 hypotheses to this group of Microsoft partners that I was in front of a couple of weeks ago. I think the first one we're all going to violently agree on. The first one is it shouldn't be about efficiency. It should be about reimagining.
100%. 100%. You cannot incrementally improve and stay relevant today. You need to have a step function mindset. And this is, again, operating like a chef. If you're learning by analogy versus learning by first principle, if you don't know the taste of those ingredients, these new ingredients, so in the absence of recipe, you can mix ingredients and still create a delicious meal, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I think that actually in Boundos, we talked about not efficiency, but effectiveness.
Right.
Which is slightly different, but pretty much connected.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, what I'm seeing is so many services companies that are trying to help out their customers on an AI journey is they're just looking at use cases that are going to take little chunks of efficiency here and there, and
Sure.
I think it's the reimagining. It's the 100%. Bigger step. Which I did say we were definitely going to agree on that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would say to that is there is absolutely, we shouldn't be trying to stop people experimenting, right?
Yeah.
So, people need to start feeling comfortable. So if they start with things that they know, so if they start with efficiency gains, that's not bad. It's just that that's not going to get you all the way to a new, to a new vision.
Yeah.
It's going to keep you kind of. I mean, it is incremental, but there's no harm in starting there.
Yeah. I actually used the analogy. It used to be there were kind of like two modes of kind of cultural shift, if you like. You could take those little incremental steps, towards the destination. But to be honest, usually by the time you got halfway to your destination had changed, and then you could be on the wrong path and the rest of it. The other one was like paradigm shift, which is right, overnight we're going to be like this. I'm not sure. For me, I'm not sure either of those two things quite work. I almost prefer the burning ships methodology, which is saying in a year's time, we're not going to have this function done by human beings.
Yeah.
So what have we got to do between now in the next 12 months to get us to the point where that's going to happen? That seems like a model that I think is appropriate in this world.
If I was back as a practitioner, owner of a line of business, I am not. It's okay to look in the past, just don't stare. Yeah. I don't want better sameness. Better sameness is the easiest thing to replace.
Yeah.
So as much as it's okay to show efficiency and have small wins to gain momentum and confidence, that's not the path that's going. I think it's going to require. Yeah, I think it's going to require a more bold, more disruptive thinking.
Yeah, and one of the models that we've looked at very closely is the autonomous car, and the way that autonomy has kind of developed over actually decades. And when we were giving a keynote last week at Arizona State University, Vala talked about gradually and then suddenly. Or gradually and then all at once. Yeah. And I totally agree. And that was really resonated with the audience. We got a lot of feedback. The things that people remembered from our keynote was first, nothing happens until something moves, and then the second was gradually and then all at once.
Because in Phoenix last year you had 0 Waymos, and now you have 600 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
600 Waymo. They're only second to San Francisco, Arizona State University in Phoenix. So you can stand on the road, count to 30. 1, 2, 3. By the time you get to 30, there's a car going by you without a driver.
Yeah.
And it's now surpassed number of rides on Lyft and other ride sharing human services. So again, it's a reminder that, look, if you can operate a car in a busy city where lives are at stake and do it without any fatalities, there's been 0 fatalities with Waymo for over 8 years. This is here. So as you said, Nigel, reimagine a car without a steering wheel. Reimagine a car without gas or brake pedals. Reimagine a car without the safety mirror, because the Tesla Cybercab and the Amazon Zoox and the new AI first autonomous vehicles do not have any human user interfaces anymore.
Yeah.
When you're in Phoenix and you're in a Zoox and you're sitting in front, the passengers are in a box. In fact, there's not even a front or back notion to this car. That's not incremental design. That is some young engineer 5 years ago probably raised her hand in a design meeting and said, "Hey, I have a suggestion. Let's remove the steering wheel. Let's remove the gas and brake pedals. We don't need it."
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm just conscious of time. I'm going to put these other 3 points to you. So,
Sure.
Kind of fairly quick responses. I don't know whether you'll agree with these hypotheses or not. I think the AI revolution will be led by small businesses.
I think that's a fair comment. I mean, certainly they have less consensus building, and they have size as a competitive advantage. So, so that logically makes sense. I'm not sure right now that the largest adopters of agentic AI today are consumer-facing industries. So, banking, retail, hospitality, travel. These industries literally have dozens to hundreds of agents active in their organizations, and they tend to be larger organizations. But we're at the very beginning. So, if I could fast forward, to next year, and I wouldn't be surprised if your thinking is correct.
I kind of think of it slightly the other way around, actually, which is I'm not sure that small and medium-sized businesses are going to drive the revolution. I think small and medium-sized businesses are going to be created by the revolution.
Yeah.
So, I think large-ish companies like Shopify, for instance, are going to create the conditions that enable small and medium-sized businesses to emerge at a rate that they never have done before. So I think it's going to be an enabler rather than the driver, if you will.
Take-up of AI will be slow until corporate data is clean.
All AI projects are data projects. So, but you don't have to be great to start. You need to start in order to be great.
Love it. Final one. Companies will not take a one vendor approach to AI.
I agree.
Okay. Listen, we've come to time. Henry, Vala, that's been a fascinating discussion. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Certainly.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much for your time,
Nigel.
Nigel. It's been a pleasure.
Henry and Vala have a fascinating perspective on autonomy and AI. I really like the way they talk about fitness and how blockages, which often lead to bad results in humans, are also bad for businesses, and that the reimagining of how an organization can operate in the world of AI can tackle those blockages head on. Thanks also to Vala and Henry for indulging me with their responses to some of my own hypotheses about how AI will revolutionize the business world. I've put a link to both of their books in the show notes. That's almost it for this episode. I hope you've heard something you can put to work in your business straight away. If you have, do someone a favour and share this episode with them. All past episodes are still available, including our deep dives into the retail sector, the music industry, and some genuinely intriguing live guest interviews, so do have a browse. Standing Apart is also open for sponsorship. If you want to talk about cost-effective ways to get your brand in front of this audience, drop me a line at standingapartpod@hotmail.com. And a quick reminder, this show only grows if listeners like you back it. The algorithms will not do it for us. So if you can, hit subscribe, leave a rating, and tap that like button in your podcast app. It helps more than you think. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, whatever you do, stand apart from the crowd. Standing Apart is a Sun Bear Consulting production.